Our limits were set in 1996 and have not been updated since then. So how did this happen? Well, there used to be a very active research program in the United States. Through the 70s and 80s, we had a robust EPA laboratories, staff who were measuring, monitoring, studying this issue, issuing reports on radiofrequency radiation. In fact, the EPA was tasked to develop safety limits, but was defunded. The Telecom Act passed in 1996, and at that time, the FCC adopted RF limits. Legal action was filed by several groups, and you'll probably hear about the Cellular Phone Task Force case against the FCC. And in it, the groups allege that these limits are not acceptable. And there's many people still working on the issue now who are in that case. The court did not have a favorable ruling for the petitioners. The key reason was they said that the FCC could reasonably expect agencies such as the EPA to keep abreast of scientific developments. And they talked about how the EPA had been on the verge of releasing its own draft guidelines. So at that time, the court thought and believed erroneously that the EPA was working on this issue, when in fact, at that time, there was very little activities left in the EPA related to researching the health effects of wireless radiation. This is in my paper in Frontiers on Public Health, because I think it's so important to note. So when the EPA was, just as it was poised to release safety standards, a safety standard means that agencies have looked at the issue, they have developed it based on science, but we never did. This is a briefing that they did to the FCC about it, where they talk about their strategy. Phase 1 is going to be interim exposure guidelines, where they're going to look at known effects. Then they're going to also look at modulation, pulsation, the complexity of the wave, and come up with some final exposure guidelines. This was fully defunded. The EPA never developed safety limits for wireless radiation or for non-ionizing radiation. This is the last review that was published on radiofrequency radiation. It's from 1984, The Biological Effects of Radiofrequency Radiation. And I talk about this in my paper and document it. So if you want to go to the sources, or you can do that in the paper in Frontiers that I published in December. So we have a regulatory gap. There's no review of the totality of evidence by any U.S. federal agency in the near recent times. No risk or hazard assessment, no science-based evaluation of FCC limits. Are they appropriate? Normally, you would take the level at which credible research that you've evaluated has shown harm based on a process, and you would compare it to FCC limits and ask, are these limits acceptable? That has not been done. There is, in fact, a near absence of EMF, non-ionizing radiation activities by all U.S. regulatory agencies with health, safety, or environment expertise.